good morning and good to see you. We'll have another conversation here. You may talk story. Now, Miplab, I go back and forth with talk Pisin and English. So before we begin, if you could just introduce yourself, please.
Hey, thank you, Patrick, for the invitation and for this story. And I think it's a good. You've been posting very good videos about broader conservation issues, and so here within East Melanesia or even broader Pacific, but also focusing in different parts of PNG where you are based at PAU. So by the way, I am Junior Novera and I'm from Bougainville. I come from west coast of Bougainville, Kunua. It harbors the last frontier of forest, and unbroken forest all the way from the coast and up to the mountains. So yeah, it was good to come from that place and also thinking about how to conserve that part of the island, Bougainville.
Thank you, Junior. So you have also wider experience with not just Bougainville. I've seen a bit of your work with other NGOs, mostly in the highlands. So can you give us a little background to your work experience with conservation and resource management and communities, especially in the highlands of Papua New Guinea where you used to work as well?
Oh, Patrick, that's a very good question, and it brings me back to sort of recalling and in those first moments of learning about conservation. And I think conservation for me, it goes back to 2004 when I was doing my third year at University of Papua New Guinea. And there was a course run by WCS that time, and endemic and Deborah Wright, they were leading that course. It was a yearly course, basically to teach field techniques, edify, different skill sets or knowledge about, some of the skills that you don't learn at the university. I think this course was sort of focusing on enriching students who want to develop or build a career towards conservation. And for me, it started in 2004. I was there, and there was a call. I saw a notice board at the biology department, and it was in front of the late Professor Lanshill. And there was a call for possible potential students to go up to Goroka and participate in this course. And so I applied, and I think we have to provide names and why we want to do that course. And then we sent the Latin Lanshill sent it up to, we asked ourselves, we had to send it up to email up to WCS in Goroka. We went to Goroka, and then from Goroka we went up to Kreta Mountains on a year too. So the 3 weeks course was conducted in Kreta Mountains, in one of those communities. It was a first eye opener for me. But one of the questions I remember, and I always remember, that it's sort of a conviction to me. I think Andy, so before you start a course, you have different questions. So people just want to, generate, your background sort of thing, or maybe just sort of pick ideas. So, okay, this guy's advancing, this sort of, or something. Yeah. So they asked the question, what is conservation? And I didn't know. I didn't have any clue. Because growing up on Bougainville, I remember going to school to go and work at Panguna mine. So like activities around you want to do that, because that's a sort of inspiration that you get. And then that's what I only knew about, Panguna. And then even doing undergrad, that time, it was just evolution biology, those, theoretical biology, where it's just about, theory. And I still appreciate them as foundational science, but then I didn't know about, what is conservation. So when they asked, and I was like, I don't know, what is conservation. And then living through the conflict, the Bougainville conflict, I didn't know about, conservation. And then, a couple of participants, they answered, conservation about protection of biodiversity. It's about, fauna and flora. It's about critical critically endemic species, about these different ecosystems. And at that moment, I got a conviction, and I said, oh, so it's about protection of God's creation. So it brought me from that instant to Genesis, to the Bible story about creation. So for me, it was that instant, conviction that, oh, I think there's a career pathway for me. It's about, protecting God's creation. So it started there, and then I went back, after the course, after spending a couple of weeks in the field, we went back to Goroka, did give, presentations, and then that was the end of the course. And then following on that course, 2005, they did another course again. So I went again on a second course. So I just build up from there now, so, oh, I think this is my place, this is my space. So it just started from there, and then I finished, and I was also finishing, my undergrad. And my undergrad was in, biochemistry, biology and chemistry. So sort of, trying to relate that as well to, the training course that we did in those 2 years. And then after those 2 training courses, they send sort of a call again for people to do honors. So I went to do honors again with them. They, send an emails, keep an eye on emails. We'll send out, and if you are successful, we're gonna get it. So after that, I went and I started doing my honors with WCS, and I met everyone, all the team, and Deb and everyone else. Yeah. So from then, 2006, I did my honors. My project was focused on subsistence hunting. So that was my honors project, and so I have to sort of build research questions around that topic, subsistence hunting, and trying to ask where people are hunting, what people are hunting, who is hunting. So those different, those broader questions, but also it can drive you to understanding other specific questions, in terms of the ecology of species that they're hunting, for example, or maybe the distance or the spatial, the temporal aspects of hunting. So we were writing in teleforming, and it was, and for me, just a freshman from UPNG, and then, being thrown right into teleforming. Oh, I missed my graduation, people graduated at UPNG. I was right in the middle of teleforming, between PNG and Indonesia. So right in the jungle, very hard. So we have to get on the, we arrived there at Min Airstrip, and then another walk about a couple of hours walk, just like hiking. Oh, first time, bro, first time, and it was an experience, but I think it was a good experience, to sort of, this is conservation, this is research, and I think to grade it, I can grade it just the honors project as a PhD project as well. It's sort of the experience and the distance, and also the preparation that you do for those kind of research. So yeah, and then live there for a couple of months, and we went back and forth to collect data and collect information. But the community was, I love that community, and it was the first community for me to work with in terms of coming across the interior of PNG, like the different customs, the different culture, different traditions, and tribal groups. Like, it was also an eye-opener for me, an inspiration to build friendship with people. But yeah, I've worked through different parts of PNG, but that was sort of the first experience for me to build my career in conservation in PNG.
So you ended up working for WCS afterwards, is that correct?
Yeah, so I worked with WCS as an intern biologist while also doing my honors. Then I submitted my honors, so completed my honors, and then went to the UK at University to do my master's in Master of Science degree. When I got back, I came back and joined PNGIBR.
Oh, PNGIBR.
Yeah, biological sciences.
Yeah. Okay, so then you working for PNGIBR, you've had previous work with WCS in a remote part of Papua New Guinea. Back then it was quite remote. Even today it's still remote. These are really remote communities.
Exactly.
And so when we're thinking about conservation and conserving species in our Melanesian context, it's very different from how people may be taught conservation biology in Western universities.
True.
It's very, very different. True. Because we have a very strong innate connection to place. In your experience working with PNGIBR and earlier on Wildlife Conservation Society, what are some of the main messages you took away from your experience working with communities? If you were to advise a community that's maybe thinking about conserving a forest or reef, place, messages you could, suggestions you could give them.
Yeah, oh, thank you, Patrick. Yeah, I mean, I always regard ourselves, as landowners. For us, we are scientists, but also we are landowners because we come from a place. We come from a tribe. We belong to a place. We belong to a tribe, and we own the land. So that has been the challenge for establishing protected areas in PNG, and I think also in Melanesia, is that we sort of isolate ourselves thinking that others will come and do conservation for us. Conservation should be us, should be part of us because it's our lifestyle. I mean, for our people in the community, even us, like, growing up, we only know how to hunt, how to fish because these different animals because they are part of us, we depend on them for livelihood or even for other or spiritual, activities. So to me, I mean, for us as Melanesians, we already know that attachment, that intricate knowledge or that requisite knowledge that you may build in one time or our parents and our tribe groups. But the challenge is like many of our, for example, in PNG, like more than 85% of the people, they're still in the rural communities. And many of them are, they don't know this. Even that's been the challenge for me is about how can I go and make a difference, on Bougainville in Kunua. Because I see that over time, like in the past, 15 years of my work in PNG, mainland PNG, like many of the communities, they don't know like the scientific aspects of, a species. They only know the cultural aspects, for example, which is related to their livelihood, like they hunted species. But then, that's the status, the biological status of the species, they don't know. For example, if it's critically endangered, they wouldn't know that. Until somebody tells them about the scientific aspect, then they will know, oh, okay, this species is endangered or it's critically, it's threatened, or some sort of scientific status. And I think for us in Melanesia and in PNG, capacity building was one of WCS that time, and also PNG's key activity. It's about training and building capacity of Papua New Guineans themselves, and I believe in that because I've come to that journey and I'm still living that journey. But what is now I can do to my own community with all this, with both knowledge systems, the traditional knowledge systems which we have, but also the scientific knowledge where we have acquired from school. So ourselves individually, we are the complete conservation, what should I say?
Practitioner.
Yeah, because we have these both knowledge systems. It's part of it. It's now taking these scientific aspects and teaching our communities because they know the original aspect of conservation. So add value to the traditional aspects with the scientific knowledge that us again we have. And I believe in, like, for example, you boys, if you can do that in the Solomons in your own community, and then other people can also do it in their own community. And that's why I've been sort of proposing this, I've written a chapter on backyard conservation. So backyard conservation is not only the flower gardens that are around my house, but it goes beyond the traditional and the physical part of the land that I own with my. That I call backyard conservation. And I think we should sort of change this approach in PNG. And because of this, the complexity in PNG has been people being ignorant. I mean, people not knowing about the science, And we keep on blaming, because of this complexity with the landowners. We ourselves are landowners. We can isolate ourselves and, okay, they are landowners. Ourselves, we are landowners. When I'm in Bougainville and in Kunua, I'm a scientist, but I'm also a landowner. One of the things that we should help our communities is building the capacity. Building the capacity in a way that understand the scientific aspects, of conservation. And I'm sure people who have come to different, different training with different conservation institutions, if they can go back, let's leave Mosby, let's leave towns, let's go back and reach out for the, to these communities. They need us. And if I can go and do it in Kunua, many other Papua New Guineans can go back and do it in their own community. And I'm sure, this target of 70% or 10%, we can reach that. I believe in us going back and leading it in our own community with our own people and on our own traditional land. That's what I believe in.
That's true. That's interesting as well, because it's very rare that you find someone as educated as you that's also influential at the community level. Yeah. Okay, so you've left PNGIBR and now applied for studies. Tell us what you're doing now first.
Patrick, I think we met here when I was starting my PhD. So I'm doing I just completed my PhD. I submitted a week ago, and still we're just going through just a few administrative requirements that we have to do before the thesis is officially accepted by the university. So I've been doing my PhD here at the University of Queensland in the last 4 years, and my project is based back on Bougainville in my community Kunua. And I think one of the interesting things that motivated me to do it in Kunua is because no one has done anything on Bougainville, in terms of biodiversity conservation. Of course, we had Pirung in the 1980s or towards 1980s, towards the end of 1980s when we had Pirung central part of Bougainville, but then because of the conflict, just didn't proceed. But going back to my study, in the last 4 years, I've been working with my own community, with my people, just sort of using the little knowledge that I've acquired over time, just to sort of raise the profile of Kunua, why Kunua is important in terms of biodiversity and also the cultural richness that we have. So I think Kunua is it's one of the key biodiversity areas in East Melanesian Islands. And so I didn't know that until I started doing this PhD, and I know, it was so lucky that, I'm also contributing towards raising the profile, the biological profile of Kunua and Mount Balbi. So to me, it's rewarding, not only working in the community, but also sort of, raising the scientific profile of Kunua.
So you're done. Can you explain what your PhD was on?
So the broader aspect of my PhD is I started, working on mammals. So what's critical? What's urgent? So, after learning about, the monkey-faced bats, and I think because we also, as part of, I think, Kainacare project with Jeffrey, of course, and even Diana at UQ, we had this project, with Ocean Museum to go and document and find out about what's the sort of the current status of this critically endangered species. So that has also partly motivated me to sort of expand part of this or these questions or these approaches with the community, but also focusing on mammals, especially giant rats of Bougainville, and also the monkey-faced bat. So that was sort of the leading taxonomy groups that led me to also, document or research on other aspects. So what I wanted was also to document, the cultural aspects of people, how they relate with the environment. So that's why I did one of my chapters was also on substitution hunting, to see if people are still hunting this critical endangered species, or they're hunting other species, or just to sort of document, but also examine the subsistence hunting practices and the changes in wildlife harvesting.
So for those that don't know, the Bougainville giant, the two species of giant rats on Bougainville,
yes, they're
also found on choiseul. So there's the Poncelet's giant rat, and there's the Bougainville giant rat, Solomis salabrosis. So I did my master's on the Bougainville giant rat as well.
Yeah, I read your paper. That's right.
Some ethno work on that on the choiseul side, and you're working on the Bougainville side. Yes. Now, just for those that don't know, those species have taken the niche of tree kangaroos in insular Melanesia, in the northwest Solomons. They are arboreal. They're an arboreal species. They occasionally do come down.
Yeah.
And the literature says that they build these big nests in trees of large girth. That's the word in the mammals of the Southwest Pacific and Moluccan Islands, the Flannery's Buka. So they're really a spectacular species here. I've seen them a couple of times. I've seen them
that's good.
After I actually finished. I did an ethno study because it was so hard to find them. And I learned a really hard lesson. That was when doing a master's or PhD. Don't study an endangered species or critically endangered.
Because you have limited time only.
You have limited time. You will never probably see it in that time. These are all tupla species. Yeah. What people need to know is they are highly associated with trees of large girth. Dikpla diwai. If we are deforesting, logging, and if we're doing anything unsustainable to the forest, what happens is because those species are very in low densities too. So what happens is that we run the risk of, if not extinction, but extirpation, local extinction at sites. And I think this happens especially on choiseul in some sites that we don't, because we haven't really done any survey post-logging. Only have data pre-logging. It would be interesting to resurvey and see which species are holding out. There was an interesting study by Tyrone Lavery as well on the New Georgia monkey-faced bats in the Western Solomons. You probably read this paper, and he found that those bats are highly associated to strangler figs. Yeah. So if there was, people need, governments need development, but they also need to, kind of think a little bit about, resource extraction and ensuring that there's certain critical habitats of endangered species that are in place. If you're going to take things, if you're going to cut a tree or develop the landscape, do it in a way where there is security for not only people, but the diversity that is special and representative of the island, uniqueness of the island. Now, can you tell us about this two species of monkey-faced bats that are found on board?
So we have Pteralopex anceps, and the other one is Pteralopex flannerii. So I think it was Bougainville and the Solomons. Flannerii we haven't seen in the last more than 30 years or so. So what I did on Bougainville was establish an elevational gradient from 100 meters all the way to 2,000 meters. That was, in Kunua, that was the highest that we reached. But then if you go past Kunua and then still within Kunua district, Yeah, some peaks go beyond 2,000, but where I established the transect was from 100 meters to 2,000 meters. And I set up camera traps and, to see, what species that we have, especially focusing on giant rats, plus also any other species. And I come across, different species like even the monitor lizards and feral cats, of course, so invasive species in the Solomons, like including Bougainville, like, these feral cats are reaching higher elevations, which also have the last sort of, last landscapes of these giant rats. And I think that because from local knowledge, what people said, these big rats or these giant rats were living, they were terrestrial and they live in the barrows. So I think because of cats, and we've seen from camera traps, cats climbing these ficus, trees that we have in the Solomons. They are climbing it, and you can see an indication of these feral cats are hunting these giant rats. So they them up, up to the canopy. I think the next sort of project would be to focus on just maybe setting the camera traps up in those ficus trees, and I think tell us more about like if these giant rats are still up in the trees or they just disappeared. But interestingly, one of my cameras captured a monkey face bat going down the roots of the pandanus, this mountain pandanus. Because I think it was chewing the juice or maybe the roots. So the camera also caught the monkey face bat. Yeah, so I've caught eight individuals along the gradient. So I didn't know before I started, I didn't know they exist in Kunua. Of course, from the literature, they exist in other parts of Bougainville, like in southern part of Bougainville, sorry, in the east coast. But this my study has generated additional data points of monkey face bats. So it's very interesting, and they come very low to 200 meters. So from 200 meters up to 2,000, you see monkey face bats within this elevational band. But it was interesting to see the differences in species, but also how they sort of dwell within this broad elevational band. I think they go down mainly because of the fruiting. They love coconuts, for example, because they chew a lot of coconuts and also sago palms. But they 200 and then go 1,000. But I didn't come across Flannery. One of my is to go back and survey the swamps. In Kunua, we have large swamp where there's so many flying foxes. They roost in the swamps.
So is Flannery and Turtlepex and Seps, are they separated by any elevation or they occur together?
I think what Chris Helgen found out is they occur together.
Oh, they occur together.
Yeah, because I've seen sites on Bougainville that face beds and they some so Seps and Flannery they sort of they occur together. I haven't seen that on West Coast. I'm not too sure. Maybe the elevation or maybe other things that are causing that separation, but I'm not sure because they were caught. Flannery was caught on an island, offshore Bougainville Island. So you would see that maybe they're okay within that lower elevation. But I'm thinking that they might still go up, up the mountain.
So how high did you record the species? So
for Anseps, 2,000 meters. My gradient starts from 100 meters. So already at 200 meters, we saw the the monkey face bat flying and roosting on the coconuts. But I think that the peak elevation was 400 meters, and then because of the cloud cover as well, and I think the vegetation, I would say, the different levels that they would play a part in why they were present at that elevation.
It would be interesting to see the trend in population along the gradient.
Yes.
Whether they're abundant below or above.
Exactly.
Now,
exactly.
I'm not sure about bats, but species of birds like the pale mountain pigeon, which is also found on Bougainville. In the Solomons, we found that species to roost up in the high elevation forest on Kolobangara, and then swoop down to the lowlands to feed on the ficus and the nuts, and then go back up the mountain. So that also highlights in terms of thinking about conservation and management that we have to think about the corridor, not just you look out to mountain, because plant species exactly. On mountain all by gona like they will go and feed on ficus on the lowlands. And so when we're thinking about, especially on islands, insular systems, all those corridors are essential for freshwater fishes, gobies, migrating up to the top of the head rivers, and then the eel fish finally makes to the top of the water. For pigeons, for bats, islands are a little different from mainland areas because the landscape, because they're so compressed. And then we have the forest with the, which is so unique. They're all compressed. Masahina Bang effect compresses all our forests. So you can go from lowland, now go on top of mountain in a couple of hours and transition through, spectacular, distinct forest all the way to the top of the mountain. Another thing we can also think about as well and highlight here is those islands in the Northwest Solomons are the secondary source of species colonization throughout the Pacific. From New Guinea, and then in a secondary sense, the monkey-faced bats. The monkey-faced bats that made it to the rest of the Solomons came from Bougainville. They from anywhere else. They were blown by cyclones all the way to the Pacific. One species made it all the way to Fiji. It's only found in Tabiuni, or anyway, it's in Fiji. So whatever we do to our landscapes, it doesn't only affect us, it affects the rest of the Pacific Islands as well. So that makes Kunua and those very, very special places we should be thinking about.
Yeah, I think just going back to that point, I think that's really essential. Sort of looking at as well as the speciation of species, and how they sort of move or migrated from mainland and from Southeast Asia and down to these satellite islands that we still find some of these species, even though they have evolved to other secondary species or other new species now. But I think the point was conservation. I think you raised a good point about it's not only about the mountains and this forest, but also looking at Bougainville as a land bridge to this species. It's key for conservation. Because I mean, if we trust this place now, and then I've seen. I think I've asked Darren about also species coming back from Solomon back to Bougainville again because of less sort of a disturbance happening. Like I've seen flying foxes, flying away and then coming back, and every evening they just go up to the mountain again to feed, go down again. So I'm suspecting they might be these are the species that we're after. But I think the critical aspects of Bougainville as a whole, I always think about it. It's one of the largest islands in the archipelago, and we can miss this opportunity not to conserve it, not to sort of highlighting the importance of conservation, and not only up on the mountains but also looking. I think while we conduct this baseline studies, we're generating this information that can help us to inform and guide also our landowners and people in the village, in the community. Okay, we need to conserve this place, the sacred sites that we find on in different parts of our islands. And I think islands, as you said, islands are very, very, they are key for long-term conservation in our region.